Welcome to Making Moves, where each week myself, Ross Hastings, and Kieran Antill discuss one company making moves, aka repositioning in their industry somewhere in the world that week, for better or for worse. Always picked from a couple of options provided by our team on a Friday afternoon with very little notice, always in under 15 minutes, always unscripted, always unedited, and therefore always enabled by some form of liquid inspiration. So what are you sipping on this week, Kieran?
I am back with Hopper, our unofficial sponsor. I was thinking about this. I would say, putting water to the side, this might be the single greatest alcoholic or non-alcoholic drink I have ever had.
Yeah, I agree. I'm on the mango one.
That is actually my favourite. I just wanted to save it.
Interesting, because I don't mind. I call it category blend. I feel that the passion fruit one, the mango one are actually a completely different beverage to the poppy ones. One's
Absolutely
alcohol replacement and one's a beer replacement.
These are our craft beer versions, the craft sours.
Yeah. For another time, but Hopper, if you're listening, I think positioning, you've got the potential to be huge. It's quite a product. Anyway, today we're not talking about Hopper. Today we're talking about Cracker Barrel. And
say what?
Yeah, something that we could have been talking about this roughly 12 months ago with the very public rebranding that they did. They got massive backlash from customers. I think President Trump himself jumped on board and demanded a return to the previous brand mark. And a year-ish on from that, the CEO has got the axe. So the repositioning here is one thing that we talked about in a couple of episodes, actually, is kind of reframing market perception by putting new leadership in place and telling a story around what that means moving forward, fixing customer sentiment. And I think, much like the Hooters episode that we did, a lot of this has actually been driven by the founder having sway at board level and having a pushback to legacy or heritage ways of doing things, and a little bit maybe of a "I told you so" undercurrent going on there as well. So you have had a look into this. You also have a relationship from earlier in your life with Cracker Barrel.
I do.
The one that you kicked us off. Right.
Okay. So Cracker Barrel, what was interesting, I mean, we've only had a little bit of time here, but so I know Cracker Barrel firsthand from playing basketball in America, 5 years traveling the Midwest, Chicagoland conference and such areas. So we stopped at Cracker Barrels all the time. And yeah, it's a very American brand, and that's a real strength. I mean, there's over, I think it sits at around 650 stores across the states, about 44. It's got pretty good coverage of states. But if you look at the coverage and use the number of stores as a proxy for revenue, we don't have the revenue numbers of where they're actually making the money. They map very, very, in favor of Republican red states. Hence, you're sort of mentioning sort of Donald Trump there. So here's what I would say. I'm not passing judgment of the design or the changes in store, all those things, but I would say many of those things were fairly straightforward. In other words, I'm not saying they got these things wrong. What they got wrong was ultimately, from a data and insights point of view, understanding the climate that they exist within. And with a president like Donald Trump being a mouthpiece, and a big mouthpiece for opinion, this is an example of him putting his finger on the scale. And maybe without him, there would still be some backlash and things like that as well. But it's a case where without that president, I don't think we would be having this conversation. There would still have been some things, but there would not have been this sort of like, oh my God, the CEO's got to go and all those things. because it got their positioning, or their repositioning got repositioned for them as being woke. In other words, it wasn't about modernizing a brand or doing something customers want or helping customers in any way. It wasn't even sort of shareholder conversation. It was, you're going woke. And why? Because we're removing an old white guy who, by the way, is half-truths of whether he's an actual, there was a Uncle Herschel, but this apparently is a drawing of not him, but referred to as Uncle Herschel. So it's not like I can find anything or any announcement where they've said we're removing this person because they had something to do with slavery, or they did something somewhere and therefore there's this woke ideation. It is purely a modernization move. But in the world of gift giving and foods, being traditional isn't necessarily a weakness. And so that's where I would then start going, well, what are we trying to do there? I think it's about modernizing operations, yes. Modernizing or understanding that traditional tone of voice in a contemporary way, yes. But a way it has got repositioned for them or spun for them, and it's got the really bit is that it actually is trying to kill the history. And ironically, they are one of very few brands that have that level of nostalgia. So that's a kind of an example where if you look at a lot of the rebranding stuff, it just looks like they're trying to become just another fast food. So they're kind of moving out of an original space into a very, very dense space. I wouldn't say they're necessarily moving to any open area.
It's kind of similar to the narrative of the Hoods, this one we talked about, right? Where there's an attempt to go back to a heritage positioning, having moved to a more neutral positioning to try and capture a broader market. I guess all the narrative is around the decline since the rebranding last year. Same restaurant decline in sales across every quarter of FY26. What most of any media that I've read neglects to mention is, was there a year-on-year decline the year before and the year before that? Are we actually seeing a category that is more competitive than ever and consumer spending is reducing and all the rest of it? So are these reactive moves, each move blaming the last move for being the problem, scapegoating individuals, all the rest of it, but it's a macro narrative of just a really tough category? And is this actually going to change anything?
Look, Cracker Barrel is positioned around, from a place distribution point of view, around highways, freeways. It's a novelty to go for most people. Some people may live local near one and go one, but it's not too many people's work lunch destination, or take the family out kind of thing. It is largely linked to out of town tourists going to something that's fairly familiar. And so someone's looked at that and they're basically going, well, you know what, if we could become the regular, if we can be someone who's on the Uber route, if we can be, then we've got all these other opportunities. What that doesn't understand is, yeah, you could, but obviously that's not a secret. Lots of businesses vie for that lunchtime business and the sort of weekday evening meal with constant kind of repetition. So, that's sort of where they exist, is in this sort of novel gift giving out of town experience. Is definitely an American kind of vibe. So I think there's lots of modernization that they should be doing. They spoke a lot about their actual retail experience and making that more streamlined, digitizing a lot of things. I think it is a mistake to have removed a branding element like that completely. I would have not wanted to do that, but I don't think that the stuff they have done was completely void of trying to retain a lot of the distinctive assets. I think another thing we could probably point to is, what are the distinctive assets of this brand? And why did you feel that you needed to put a bullet in the head of that main character? Even if he came out of the logo, does he have another role? There's been amazing examples of Burger King playing with their thing. McDonald's have gone through a whole bunch of stuff where they've got multiple characters. What is Ronald McDonald? He had an issue. Ronald McDonald had an issue because he was a clown selling fast food to kids. I've worked on Bundy Rum, so the Bundy Bear. You know, there's an issue there. He's a big furry bear, and we're selling alcohol to children. So there's times that you're forced by the market to move away from some of those things. In this case, beyond just saying he's an old white guy, he could have an old white guy that could definitely be relevant today, and maybe even more so.
But it's interesting that the place/distribution point that you're making there. If we use the old analogy of the, what is the ice cream stall on the beach? The play here is really to be convenient on those routes, right? So you don't need to push the boat out to be too distinctive and risk being different and wrong. I've got a background character here.
Anyway, man.
You don't necessarily need to take that risk because you're not trying to get people to go out of their way to choose you. You're trying to build that familiarity, reinforce that habit, right? I would, having spent time in Canada, I would compare it to, say, Tim Hortons. Like, Tim Hortons is just where you stopped when you were going on a road trip, right? So, and you don't want to be controversial to try and disrupt that. That is the habit, right? So to your point, you want to focus on that place of distribution. You want to reinforce those things, that familiarity, that heritage, that habit. You don't necessarily need to take too many bets to be distinctive and grab people outside of that. But what you do want to do is modernize the way people engage with that, make sure it's still efficient and seamless and operationally sound.
This is, with being hindsight 2020, this is an example where they haven't understood the climate they're in. They haven't understood the political environment at a macro level, not just at a competitor's level that they're actually sort of sitting in. If they want to move, and I think they should, because I think that if they just go back, like do what we were doing before, I think it's just going to be managed decline because of the relevance there. But I could see how they could take that nostalgia of the Cracker Barrel experience that you have when you're interstate and traveling and create a small box offering that is more local, that is something that you could have around and have many more of those things to have that Cracker Barrel experience. But then you still have these sort of more traditional, like hub and spoke kind of idea. That doesn't mean that's for sure going to work, but that is an example of how else they can move forward. I don't think it should be just slap the guy back up because, to be honest, he's actually a pretty two-dimensional character. They haven't really activated him. So I think they should not just put him back, but say, well, what's he got to say?
Side note, and we've got less than 2 minutes left, but I've often wondered how electric vehicles and charging would change this sort of pit stops type dynamic, and whether petrol stations, service stations would start to become not a grab a sandwich and go, but actually a sit-down meal while your car charges. And I haven't really seen any habit stacking of this sort of restaurant with the charging behavior. I don't know if you have, but I've been waiting for something like a Cracker Barrel in the States or Tim Hortons in Canada or whoever, McDonald's drive-thrus.
Yeah, some of them obviously are positioned with service stations like the Tim Hortons and stuff. So they might have that. But what you bring up makes me kind of laugh. Is I would like to see an EV plugged into an old wooden wagon as an EV charger in one of these places. And I think they're those storytelling things that would be kind of fun for them to do. Again, I think that this is a particularly volatile environment, and the reaction is far bigger than it would have otherwise been.
All right. As always, I'm getting hit by Spidey balls here. As always, in 20 seconds, what's your one sentence takeaway for anyone listening today?
Oh, make sure you understand the broader environment that you're actually doing things in.
Sounds good. All right. Cheers.